Hello everyone, welcome back to Elite Tales. Here we discover the emotional and captivating stories about Elon Musk. In this video, we will capture the heartwarming moments of famous entrepreneur. Before we begin, I request you that please subscribe our channel for more interesting videos. It was Christmas evening at a small orphanage nestled in a quiet corner of the city. The cold air outside seemed to seep into the very walls of the orphanage. But it wasn't the chill that made the air feel heavy. It was the silence. Christmas, a time of joy, of family, of warmth, was fast approaching. But inside these walls it felt like just another day. The children, orphaned and abandoned, had learned to make do with what little they had. Some had been in the orphanage for years, while others had arrived more recently. They had grown used to their new lives, but it didn't make the loneliness any easier to bear. The Christmas decorations hung limply around the walls, some of them handmade from scraps of paper and old ribbons. They were far from perfect, but they were all they had. And yet, as they gazed at the decorations, the children couldn't help but wish for something more. This wasn't a Christmas like others might experience. There would be no big dinners, no family gatherings, no warm embraces. The children were just trying to get by, just trying to survive each day with the faint hope that, somehow, things would get better. It wasn't that they were ungrateful. They knew the orphanage staff tried their best to make the holiday special, but there was always something missing, something deep inside them that couldn't be filled by presents or a simple meal. Emma, a shy 10-year-old girl with a mop of brown hair, sat by the window in her room, staring out at the world as the first snowflakes began to fall gently from the sky. She couldn't help but wonder how Christmas felt for other children with families, with parents who could hold them close and tell them everything would be okay. For Emma, the holiday season had always been a reminder of what she didn't have. Her small hands pressed against the cold window pane, and she whispered softly to herself, "Please, God, just let me have a family this Christmas." Across the room, 12-year-old Jaden sat on his bed, holding tightly to his favorite teddy bear, an old, worn-out stuffed animal that had been with him for as long as he could remember. His fingers ran through the fur, and he closed his eyes, as though the bear could somehow protect him from the sadness that seemed to fill the orphanage. He too had his own wish. "Please, God, I just want something to smile about. Please let this Christmas be different." The other children felt it too, the weight of their wishes, their quiet prayers to the heavens, asking for just a little bit of love, a little bit of joy, something to show them that they weren't invisible. But they didn't expect miracles. They didn't expect anyone to listen. For them, Christmas had become just another day on the calendar, a reminder of the family they had lost, and of the things they could never have. The staff of the orphanage did their best to make the holiday special. A small tree stood in the corner of the common area, covered in lights and cheap ornaments that had been collected over the years. It wasn't much, but it was the best they could do. The children gathered around it every evening, trying to keep the spirits up, but it was hard to ignore the emptiness that lingered in the room. Emma, Jaden, and the others tried their best to pretend they were fine, but deep down, they longed for something more. On Christmas Eve, just a day before the holiday, the children sat in the common room, their heads drooping with exhaustion. The room was filled with the soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of dishes as the staff set out the evening meal. The small wooden table, which had seen better days, was covered with simple food. Nothing extravagant, just enough to fill their bellies. There was no Christmas turkey, no special dessert, just a regular meal. The children ate quietly, exchanging a few words. Each of them, in their own way, had already given up on the idea of a perfect Christmas. They were used to disappointment. They had learned to live with the silence, the lack of warmth, and the absence of family. As they finished their meal, Emma quietly excused herself and returned to her spot by the window. The snow outside was starting to accumulate, and she watched as it fell, one flake at a time, transforming the world outside into a winter wonderland. Maybe, just maybe, she whispered to herself, someone will come and make this Christmas special. But she didn't expect an answer. She didn't expect a miracle. Meanwhile, just a few miles away, one of the world's most influential figures, Elon Musk, was busy preparing for his own Christmas Eve. He had just finished a meeting with his team at Tesla, but his mind kept drifting back to a conversation he had had earlier that week. His assistant had mentioned a small orphanage that had fallen on hard times. The staff there were doing their best, but there wasn't much to go around for the children. The thought of these kids, spending Christmas in an orphanage with nothing to call their own, had stayed with Elon. As Elon Musk sat in his office, looking at the pile of papers in front of him, the conversation with his assistant lingered in his mind. The orphanage, the children. It had been a simple mention, something his assistant had said almost in passing, but for some reason, it struck a deep chord within him. He couldn't stop thinking about the kids, about how they would spend their Christmas, alone, without the warmth of a family or the joy of holiday celebrations. He imagined their faces, their little hands pressed against windows, hoping for a miracle. Elon had been busy, as always, working on countless projects for Tesla, SpaceX, and his other ventures. His calendar was full, and there was never enough time in the day. But that night, as the snow began to fall outside his office window, something about the thought of those children weighed heavily on him. He had always been driven by the desire to change the world. But here, in this moment, it wasn't about space exploration, electric cars, or groundbreaking technology. It was about something far simpler, yet infinitely more meaningful, making a difference in the lives of those who needed it the most. As Christmas Eve approached, Elon found himself unable to shake the feeling that he had to do something. He wasn't sure what, but he knew he had the means to make a change. So he decided to do what he felt was right, to visit that orphanage, to meet the children, and, most importantly, to give them a Christmas they would never forget. The next morning, Elon made the call. His assistant was surprised when he received the request. "You want to visit an orphanage on Christmas Eve?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. "And what exactly do you want to do there?" Elon's answer was simple. "I want to bring them Christmas. All of it. The joy, the warmth, the love. I want them to know they are seen. I want to make this Christmas different for them." His assistant hesitated for a moment, then agreed. They quickly put together a plan. They would gather gifts for the children, everything from clothes to toys to books, and arrange for a small surprise. Elon didn't want to just hand out presents. He wanted to make it personal, meaningful, and memorable. The children at the orphanage had no idea what was about to happen. As Christmas Eve arrived, the air was thick with anticipation, but it was the kind of anticipation that comes from years of quiet disappointment. They weren't used to receiving gifts, especially not from people outside the orphanage. They had learned to manage their expectations, to accept that their lives would always be different from those of other children. And so, as the evening began, they went about their usual routine, trying to push the sadness away. Emma, sitting by the window, gazed out at the falling snow. Her fingers curled into fists, and she whispered another prayer, her voice trembling slightly. "Please, God, let this Christmas be different. Let me feel loved, just for once." In the common area, the children sat around the small tree. Its lights flickered dimly, casting long shadows across the room. They all smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach their eyes. The orphanage staff had done their best to make the evening special, but deep down, the children knew the reality. There would be no big celebration, no family coming to gather them up and bring them into the warmth of a home. As they gathered around the tree, they tried to focus on the small blessings they had. They exchanged small gifts, the ones they had made for each other. Handwritten notes, small drawings, simple gestures of kindness. These were the things that brought them comfort, the things that kept their spirits afloat. But there was always that gnawing emptiness, the feeling that something was missing, that they were missing out on something every other child seemed to have. And so they waited for the evening to pass, just like any other night. But this night was different. The sound of a car pulling into the parking lot outside the orphanage didn't register at first. The children were too caught up in their quiet conversations, their small acts of kindness toward one another, to notice. But when the door to the orphanage suddenly opened, the children turned in unison. Standing in the doorway, smiling brightly, was Elon Musk. For a moment, there was only stunned silence. The children stared, unsure if they were seeing things clearly. Was this really him? The man they had only heard about on TV, the entrepreneur who had made history with his companies? The man who had gone to space, who had changed the world? Yes, it was him. And he wasn't alone. Behind Elon, a small group of helpers had followed him into the room. They carried large bags filled with gifts, wrapped in colorful paper, each one carefully selected for the children. There were toys, clothes, books, things that every child wished for, but rarely had the chance to receive. Elon stepped forward, his voice gentle but clear. "Hi everyone, I'm Elon Musk, and I wanted to bring you something special this Christmas. You all deserve a Christmas that is filled with joy and love, and I hope that's what you'll experience today." The children could hardly believe their ears. Their hearts began to race, and some of them even stood up in excitement, their eyes wide with disbelief. "But why?" Emma managed to whisper, her voice soft but full of emotion. "Why would you do this for us?" Elon smiled warmly, his gaze filled with sincerity. "Because I believe that everyone, no matter where they come from or what they've been through, deserves to feel loved. And I wanted to make sure you all knew that you're important, you're special, and you matter." For a moment, no one spoke. The children simply looked at him, their hearts swelling with emotions they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, gratitude, and even a bit of wonder. Could it be true? Could someone like Elon Musk really care enough to make their Christmas special? And then, one by one, Elon began to hand out the gifts. Each child was given something just for them, something they had always wanted, but never dreamed would be theirs. The room filled with the sound of wrapping paper being torn open, of excited gasps and laughter, of hugs and tears. Emma received a beautiful doll, one that looked just like her, with curly hair and a bright red dress. She held it to her chest, her eyes filling with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much." Jaden, who had always dreamed of owning a new jacket to keep warm during the cold winters, received a shiny, brand-new winter coat. The warmth of it wasn't just physical, it wrapped around him like a promise that things could get better. "I don't know what to say," he whispered, his voice cracking. This is more than I ever hoped for." The children's hearts overflowed with joy and gratitude. It wasn't just about the gifts themselves, it was about the love, the kindness, and the hope that Elon had given them. He had given them something far more precious than material possessions. He had given them a moment of pure happiness, a sense of worth, and the understanding that no matter their circumstances, they were not forgotten. As the day went on, the children shared their stories with Elon. They talked about their dreams, their hopes for the future, and the things they wished for. Some of them wanted to become doctors, others wanted to be teachers, artists, or scientists. Elon listened intently, offering words of encouragement. "You all have something special inside you," he said, "and you can do whatever you set your mind to. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. This Christmas, I want you to know that you are capable of greatness. Don't let anything stop you from chasing your dreams." His words filled the orphanage, and for the first time in a long while, the children truly believed that they could achieve something extraordinary. As the evening came to a close, Elon stood up to leave. The children gathered around him, offering their thanks, their smiles, and their hugs. Elon smiled back, his heart full. "I'll never forget this," one of the children said. "You've made our Christmas the best ever." Elon smiled and nodded. "And I'll never forget you all. Merry Christmas." And with that, he walked out of the orphanage, leaving behind a group of children whose lives had been changed forever. They may not have had the family they longed for, but they had something even more powerful: the knowledge that they were loved and that there were people in the world who cared about them. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe for more heartwarming stories, and share it with your friends. Let's spread the message that kindness and love can change lives, no matter who we are. After all, sometimes the smallest acts of kindness have the power to make the biggest difference. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.